What's going on, guys? This is Mike with Chit Chat Gaming. Now, I get asked this question all the time, and it is this question: what's your favorite console of all time? Now, if I was to sit here and try to narrow that out for you, I'd be here all day long. And actually, to be honest with you, I probably couldn't even do that because there are so many consoles out there that I have grown up with. Again, keep in mind that I grew up from the late 80s all the way to the 90s. I've been through tons of consoles, and for me to sit here and try to actually narrow one down for you, it'd be actually impossible. Absolutely impossible to do. But what I can do is tell you the console that kind of like made me a gamer, that kind of made my childhood. Now, the Super Nintendo is what defined my childhood, and what I mean by that is, for me, growing up, as you get older, you kind of get more into games and such. So for me, the Super Nintendo was kind of like the console that was around as I was growing up in the 90s and such. So for me, that I always say that's the console that redefined my childhood, or defined my childhood, sorry. And for me, that's why I'm so hyped to get my hands on the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, because again, it's one of my favorite of all time. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you know what, Mike? You can actually emulate those. You can get a Retro Pi. You can get those on your PC. Hell, I can go ahead and get an SNES emulator, NES emulator, all on my PSP. I don't want to do that. The reason why I have refused to do that is because of the fact that I want to play those on the Classic Editions. Yes, I know they're basically just a little Retro Pi. I know they're just little emulation boxes, but they're collector's edition, and for me, it's a piece of my childhood. It's made by Nintendo. It's got the old school look to it. It has the actual SNES and the NES controllers that look identical to how they were. So for me, allow me to have that. Allow me to live my childhood through that, and don't give me crap for not having a Retro Pi or for spending my hard-earned money on this. I don't go buy these things from scalpers. I don't go on eBay. I wait in line. I waited day one to get a hold of my NES Classic, and I waited, of course, well, I didn't wait. Now I'm actually going to get a pre-order. I actually got my SNES pre-order, but yes, I had to wait in line. I had to go above and beyond to get it, but that's my decision. That's what I did, and that's what I choose to do. So don't give me any crap about that, because I've been getting a lot of it lately here for that reasoning. But this video is not about that, so I'm not going to talk about that. I want to go ahead and talk a little about the NES, the original NES here, the Nintendo Entertainment System. I think I got Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt in there. Another great game, by the way. For me, this console here is definitely the one that kind of made me a gamer. My uncle had a 2600, an Atari 2600 growing up, but me, I never got into it because I was still so young. I remember playing this baby all the time. I played WrestleMania like you would not believe. WrestleMania was definitely my jam on this console, as well as the Ninja Turtles game, the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game that gets so much heat and so much static. But you know what? I was a huge fan of the comic book series. I was a huge fan of the cartoon series, a huge fan of the movies. So for me, it was a great part of my childhood. I loved playing that game. I played WrestleMania Challenge as well too. I have video proof of that, me playing that game. I can't believe I mean, when you go to play that game now and you boot it up, it's just like, oh my gosh, I sat here for hours playing this thing. But again, that's what we had. So for me, my love for the NES is always going to be there. I love the NES. I love the cartridges. I love collecting games for it. You know, I love everything that there is about the NES. Even graphically, the 8-bit, everything is just so great. So much so that, when they announced this bad boy here, the NES Classic Mini, I was so hyped for it. Again, I got a lot of people talking, crap and saying, hey, you can do this, you can do that. It doesn't matter. I had to have this because I wanted it on my shelf. It's made by Nintendo. It's definitely, like I said, it's a Nintendo product. It looks just original to what it looks just like how the original looked here. So I mean, there's not much of a difference besides being about 1,000,000 times smaller. But again, though, there's so many different knockoffs of this out there. There's so many different clone consoles out there, but nothing's going to compare to this thing. I don't care if it's an emulation or not. Nothing's going to compare to having this actual thing in your hands, unless you have this and you're actually, reading the cartridges and not just an emulator. This thing actually, reads all the cartridges and everything, gives you the true gaming experience of Nintendo right here in this box versus this one. But for me, though, Nintendo was definitely like the console that made me a gamer. SNES defined my childhood. I keep saying redefined. It defined my childhood. And nothing against Sega. If Sega is your thing, that's fine. I was a huge Sega fan too. We had a Sega Genesis. Sega Saturn is definitely in my top 3 of my all-time favorite consoles. I gotta say it's probably the SNES, the NES, and the Sega Saturn. It's probably my top 3 favorite of all time. I love the Saturn, but for me personally though, the NES is definitely the console that, you know, definitely introduced me to gaming. Sega Genesis came around at the same time, shortly after. I loved it, but for me, again, the NES is what definitely made me a gamer. Now, another thing here is the 1985 Zapper. I love this thing. I wish that they made this for this. I know that modern TVs nowadays don't allow you to use these things. I have a VirtuaCop for my Sega Saturn. I actually plugged it in one day. I was going to use it. I have 2 guns, the red and the blue gun. I was going to use them, and it wouldn't allow me to do that. So I figured it's definitely the screen that I've heard it all along. You got to use an old CRT TV to be able to do that, which I have, and I'm about ready to just hook it up just so I can play some Duck Hunt. But now let me know if they have this thing. I haven't seen anything. Maybe they do. I have to look it up if they have this for the Classic Edition, because I definitely get one. Now, with that being said, though, I want to know in the comment section below what console, not just as your favorite console of all time, but what console basically made your guys' childhood. What console introduced you to gaming? What defined your childhood? Was it the NES? Was it a PlayStation? You know, was it a Dreamcast? A lot of people say it's a Dreamcast. The GameCube, oh my god, I forgot the GameCube. The GameCube is very, very close to my top 3 as well. It'd probably be number 4 of my all-time favorite consoles. But, you know, was it the Xbox? I don't care what it was. The Wii, let me know in the comment section below here what you guys think, what your guys' thoughts are. If you have a story that you want to talk about, or you want to mention about how you're introduced to it, like I mentioned for me, Ninja Turtles and you know, WrestleMania was definitely 2 of my fondest memories, as well as my all-time favorite game for the NES, which is Super Mario Bros. 3. I love the first one. The second one was, it was okay, it was good, but you know, Super Mario Bros. 3 is by far my all-time favorite NES game of all time. Also, keep in mind that on the NES, lots of legends were born, including Zelda, you know, Metroid, Mario, like I mentioned, Kirby. There are so many great games on the NES that were born on the NES that are still relevant to this day. Again, though, just let me know in the comment section. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. I want to know what you guys think. And I want to know what your favorite console is, or what kind of brought you to gaming, or what kind of introduced you to gaming, and what defined your childhood. Again, though, this has been Mike with Chit Chat Gaming, and as always, happy gaming.